What's going on, everyone? So, the Brooklyn Nets have officially fired head coach Jacque Vaughn. This isn't really surprising. Jacque Vaughn, during his tenure, was 64 and 65 with the Brooklyn Nets. Personally, I don't think he was the right coaching hire to begin with. To kind of let him close out the year and let him kind of finish his season, I think that they should have. Like, what was the point of firing him now? You're not doing anything this season anyway, right? Even if best case scenario, get into the postseason, like, what are you planning on winning here? You're currently 2.5 games out of the play-in. Even if you were to catch the Atlanta Hawks and end up in the 10th seed, okay, what? You at best are going to lose in the first round to the Boston Celtics? Cool. Nice. I don't understand what the logic is here. You might as well let him finish. I don't think that they should have kept Jacque Vaughn long term and signed him to the head coach anyway, but you did what you did. And look, bad teams are bad teams for a reason. And they make poor decisions and they dig themselves into these holes and then they try to scramble and panic to get out. And I don't, and I'll never understand it. I'll never understand some of the decision making that some of these organizations make. And look, Brooklyn has had opportunities to choose a direction, stick to the direction, and kind of retool and rebuild, right? Obviously, you go get Kyrie Irving, you go get Kevin Durant. Many people like to talk about that and how that was a failure and whatnot. I don't look at it that way. I actually thought that that was a great decision. Yes, it didn't lead to the success that you hoped, but every team in the league would have taken Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant if they could have. I thought that that was a good decision. The Steve Nash hiring wasn't, right? Again, good decision making kind of falls into your lap. I don't even know if you could call that a good decision. It just was kind of something that fell into your lap and you found ways to sabotage it. So bad teams do. Adam Silver even talked about this in his All-Star Game press conference, where he talked about, bad teams are still going to be bad. That the NBA is trying to kind of save organizations from themselves, but a bad organization, they're just going to continue to do bad things no matter what you do. Unless the NBA basically holds their hand every step of the way, which you're not going to be able to do. Poor decision-making is going to be poor decision-making. Teams that are historically bad are usually historically bad for a reason, right? Brooklyn Nets, sticking with them. They got an offer in this past trade deadline for 4 first and young players for Mikal Bridges. He's not worth that. But that was something that fell into your lap that you had an opportunity to seize and take on and go a new clear direction and hit the reset button, hit the rebuild button. Why are some teams okay with being mediocre? That doesn't compute with me, right? Isn't the organization's job to put the best team possible and to build the best team possible, right? Everyone goes through rebuilds. Everyone goes through stages in which they got to retool. You just moved off of Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. People expect you to have to hit the reset button. You got some great assets in Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson. You got some nice pieces on this roster that many teams would probably value, and you could actually get a nice haul for. You're getting insane offers for some of these guys that just aren't worth that. Sell high. Are you winning a championship with Mikal Bridges as your best player? No. Are you going to get another superstar to pair with Mikal Bridges? Right? Maybe Donovan Mitchell comes to Brooklyn in the offseason. And you get him, and it's like, okay, fine. But one, would Donovan Mitchell really want to go to Brooklyn with the decision-making that they've made lately? Right? Because even if you do get Donovan Mitchell, is Donovan Mitchell and Mikal Bridges the answer? Probably not. But you know what would have been? If you went and got Donovan Mitchell and now you had 30 first-round picks and a bunch of young players that you could go and push your chips to the table to go build a super team around Donovan Mitchell. You don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, but you know what you have in the moment. One in the hand is worth 2 in the bush, in my opinion. And you look at a team like Brooklyn, who just continue to find ways to sabotage themselves and to kind of shoot themselves in the foot. And they're not the only team. No, they're one of the teams. But take a team like the Chicago Bulls. That's another great example of an organization that is perfectly okay with being mediocre. I was screaming for them to trade and sell the farm last season, not this season. They should have done it this season, but I screamed for them to do it last season, right? Trade DeMar DeRozan, trade Zach LaVine, trade Vu, basically hit the reset button and rebuild this roster from the ground up, right? I understand Orlando, and sometimes you got to just eat, you know what, and call it a day and make the proper choice. You had teams that were in total desperation last season. A team like the Lakers probably would have sold the farm to go get a DeMar DeRozan or a Zach LaVine. And you didn't go and do your due diligence. You know, you had teams that were vying for Vu. You had teams that were interested in multiple players on your roster, and you decided, no, let's go be a play-in team and not even make the postseason. Like, for what? And now this season, you're going to do the exact same thing. Now this season, you're going to go in here and you're going to be mediocre once again. You're the 9th seed. You're 4 games out of the 7th or 8th seed. Chances are you're probably going to finish as the 9th seed. You wanted to now trade Zach LaVine when teams didn't really care, and he's overpriced and he has injury. And guess what? Now he's out for the season with injuries, and you're going to what? You're going to try to trade him again next season? Again, bad teams make bad decisions. Teams that are okay with being mediocre. I get with Lonzo and everything like that, you were a half-decent team, and it was like, I wonder what we could be. But guess what? You knew going into this season, because you got the exceptions and all that stuff, that Lonzo Ball was not going to finish, that was not going to play at all this season. And he didn't play last season, and you knew he wasn't going to play last season. So you knew you weren't going to get to see what this looked like. And now Chicago is a team that is probably going to lose DeMar DeRozan for nothing in the offseason. They're very likely not going to trade Zach LaVine unless they actually give up assets to go and trade for him. So now you're going backwards once again. Vu probably still has some value. There might be some teams that may take him. And it's just, you just continue to see poor decisions. And I'll never understand organizations being okay with being mediocre and being an organization that is fine being a play-in team or the middle of the pack, right? What do you have to do? There's teams constantly trying to look at all the top teams like the Knicks, the Bucks, the Celtics. Like, all these teams are already playoff teams and could be contending teams. And yet they're constantly making improvements. They're constantly making adjustments. They're constantly doing things to try to better themselves. Team like the Minnesota Timberwolves took a chance, right? I was one of the people that thought I still think that they heavily overpaid for Rudy Gobert, but hey, it's led to them being the 1 seed in the Western Conference, and we'll see what they do in the postseason. You look at a team like the Thunder that had a potential dynasty on their hands at one point and made poor decisions, shooting themselves in the foot, but have now been patient, have course corrected, learn from their mistakes, and appear to be a team that is headed in the right direction, have one of the most promising young rosters in the entire league, and they're the 2 seed in the Western Conference. You look at teams throughout history, like, the Nuggets finally get over the hump, right? By making the right decisions, making the right pieces, doing the right moves, and guess what? Now they won an NBA championship, first one ever, right? It's just, you see some of these teams, and it's just like, what is the logic? What are you thinking? Right? Like, sometimes people in general, their worst enemies are themselves. And you have a lot of these like GMs and organizations that don't want to admit fault and don't want to admit that they made the wrong choice. Right? And instead of just saying, you know what, we messed up, or hey, we tried, right? Going back to Brooklyn. The Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving thing, I don't look at it as a fail. I look at, you guys made an attempt, you tried, you made some poor decisions along the way, but guess what? You got 2 stars with an opportunity to maybe push for a championship, and it just didn't work out, right? I would much rather that than some of these teams that are just, again, okay with being mediocre. Take Atlanta, right? Atlanta goes and makes the conference finals. I think that was the worst decision or the worst thing that ever happened to them. Because I think that they believed that their decision making was justified. Two, I think that they thought that they were better than they were. And then go make a poor decision in trading a bunch of stuff to go get DeJounte Murray when you were already headed in the right direction. You were already on the right path. All you needed to do was unload John Collins when you were getting offers that were absolutely insane, when you were getting 4 first-round picks and a young player for John Collins. But you kept dangling him. Teams eventually got sick of it, and you ended up selling John Collins for pennies on the dollar. You ended up trading a bunch of stuff to go get DeJounte Murray. And now look, this past trade deadline, you should have blown it up, and you didn't. And you kept DeJounte Murray, and you kept all these things. And I understand you wanted to try to recoup as many assets, and you weren't happy. But sometimes you have to just eat you-know-what and move on and course correct. And now you're probably losing Trae Young at the end of the season. Now you're probably going to have to end up trading your superstar because he's not going to want to be there. He's not going to want to re-sign. And if the reports are true, he's going to end up pushing himself to the Lakers this offseason. So now you're going to lose your superstar because you decided it was better to keep DeJounte Murray and it was better to keep playing games with John Collins. And now you want to hit the reset button. And Trae Young's like, I don't want to go through rebuild. We're terrible right now. I don't want to wait 5 years for us to become a contender. And again, it's just these poor decisions by these organizations. You know, and look, Atlanta, they stumbled themselves into the conference finals a couple years ago. That's great. And instead of just staying on course, they decide, no, we need to push our chips in and go get a guy that didn't make sense to begin with. You have Trae Young. Like, what was the logic? What was the thinking here? All right, like, who in that organization thought DeJounte Murray was the answer? That, oh, let's go get a point guard when we already have a point guard. It just, again, it was illogical. When you were on the right path, you just needed to stay course and wait for the big fish. And you didn't. And now you're in a position where you're probably going to lose everything. Right? At this point, you're probably going to have to trade Trae Young and keep DeJounte Murray, which I actually don't think is the worst thing for Atlanta. I actually think DeJounte Murray can still keep them afloat, especially if you put the right pieces around him. I mean, DeJounte Murray was a guy that when he got to play point guard, and even with Atlanta, when he's allowed to play point guard, is like top 5 in efficiency in like every category. So they still will probably be where they're at right now, at worst, if they trade Trae Young and keep DeJounte Murray. But you look at these teams like the Brooklyn Nets, the Atlantas, the Bulls, like they always seem to be way behind. Like the decision, the right choice in the right direction is staring at them in the face, screaming at them, and yet they seem to still find ways to fumble the bag. I just won't get it. I mean, again, bad teams are bad, and there's just no way around it. And some of the decision making on some of these organizations, like Jacque Vaughn, firing Jacque Vaughn right now does what? What does it solve? What does it solve? It solves nothing. It does nothing. You're still not a good team. You're now trying to backtrack, and it's just, and who are you gonna get? It's not the coach. You just don't have a good team. You don't have that number one option. Mikal Bridges might not even be a number 2 option. He's like a super third option, right? Mikal Bridges as your third guy you're probably really good, right? Like if you had Mikal Bridges when you had Kyrie and Kevin Durant, you might have won a championship, but you didn't. And now you have a bunch of just like really good players, but you don't have those number 1 and number 2 guys. So I don't get it. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion. Pass a question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? Agree with my points? Disagree with my points? Again, how you feel, whatever your thoughts are, I would love to hear it. So let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me out a lot. Lets me enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.